the boy who tried to rewrite Rome and paid the price. In the long blood-stained saga of Rome's emperors, few names provoke such a complex mixture of fascination, revulsion, and tragic awe as that of Elagabalus. He wasn't just an emperor, he was a storm of silk and fire of incense and scandal of dreams too wild for the world he inherited. In 218 AD, a 14-year-old Syrian boy named Marcus Aurelius Antoninus ascended the throne of the greatest empire the world had ever seen. Rome, built on discipline, tradition, and conquest, suddenly found itself ruled by a high priest of an Eastern sun god, a teenager, a stranger, an idea. History would remember him by the name of the god he served, Elagabalus. His reign would last only 4 years, but in that time he would ignite Rome's deepest anxieties about power, gender, religion, and the limits of identity. This isn't just a story of decadence or madness. It is the raw chronicle of a society forced to confront its reflection and violently rejecting what it saw. The rise, a child of the sun. Elagabalus was born not in Rome but in Emesa, a Syrian city where gods were older than time and the stars were worshipped in stone. As high priest of Elagabal, a solar deity symbolized by a sacred black meteorite, he led rites filled with music, incense, and ancient mystery. But he was more than a mystic. He was a pawn in a dynastic game. His mother, Julia Soamius, and grandmother, Julia Maisa, claimed he was the secret son of the slain emperor Caracalla. It was likely a lie, but one told with precision. Eastern legions loyal to Caracalla rallied behind the boy. Within weeks, Emperor Macrinus was overthrown. Rome had a new ruler. The 14-year-old priest became emperor. The journey to Rome took more than a year. On the way, Elagabalus consolidated power, rewarding allies, punishing enemies, and already hinting at the radical persona that would soon shock the empire. The collision east meets west. In 219 AD, Elagabalus entered Rome not as a restorer of Roman values, but as a living embodiment of everything the capital had long regarded with suspicion. He adorned himself in flowing silks. His eyes were lined with kohl. He was draped in perfume and mystery. Rome, accustomed to stern marble men carved in virtue and violence, now bowed before an emperor who moved like a priest and spoke like a god. At the core of his rule was the black meteorite, the sacred stone of Elagabalus, placed triumphantly in a new temple that cast shadows over the heart of Roman religion. He proclaimed the supremacy of the sun god and declared all other deities subordinate. Jupiter, Mars, and the pantheon of Roman divinity were no longer supreme in their own city. But Elagabalus's revolution wasn't just theological. It was cultural. Ceremonial processions that once honored civic gods now became spectacles of Eastern mysticism. Traditional festivals were rebranded. Ecstatic dances and elaborate sacrifices replaced somber Roman rites. He shattered not only the boundaries between East and West, but the boundary between emperor and priest, becoming both political sovereign and spiritual medium. The scandal identity unbound. Religious upheaval alone might have been weathered, but Elagabalus did something far more subversive. He transformed himself. He adopted roles and appearances that blurred every societal line. He wore women's clothing not as disguise, but as declaration. He asked to be addressed not in masculine titles, but with feminine honorifics. He didn't conceal this identity. He proclaimed it. He presented himself not as a contradiction, but as a new category of being. Ancient chroniclers scorned these acts, casting them as signs of madness or depravity. But viewed through another lens, Elagabalus was challenging the very foundation of imperial masculinity. In a world that prized the image of the virtuous patriarch, he offered the vision of a fluid sovereign, a ruler whose legitimacy came not from conformity, but from divine uniqueness. His personal life became the empire's obsession. His marriage to a Vestal virgin was not only scandalous, but sacrilegious, shaking religious institutions to their core. His relationships with male lovers, elevated publicly and treated as equals, defied every Roman custom of private indulgence and public discretion. To traditionalists, this wasn't mere excess, it was a philosophical threat. The court, a theater of chaos. The imperial court, once a center of imperial order, became a carnival of symbolism and sensation. Feasts were held with dishes made from rare and exotic animals. Courtiers were assigned roles and rituals that felt more like dreams than governance. Appointments were made based on loyalty to the emperor's spiritual mission, not administrative competence. Senators found themselves sidelined. Military leaders lost access to the throne. A government of mystics, lovers, and performers rose in their place. Rome's power structure began to resemble the temple more than the battlefield. Decisions were delayed for omens. State matters were interrupted for sacred dances. The line between statecraft and ceremony disappeared. And in the shadows of it all stood Julia Maesa, watching her creation slip beyond her control. The fall betrayed by blood. The Praetorian Guard, once protectors, now disillusioned, whispered discontent. Veterans grumbled as the frontiers weakened. Senators, humiliated and sidelined, plotted quietly. And the people, once curious now, murmured fear. Julia Maesa acted. She redirected her ambition toward Alexander Severus, a boy in her bloodline. But everything Elagabalus was not obedient conventional Roman. Her plan was simple: preserve the dynasty by replacing its prophet. The final act unfolded swiftly. Elagabalus, summoned to the guard's camp for what he believed was a routine address, arrived in ceremonial robes, radiant, unprepared. There was no applause, no loyalty, only silence. And then the blades. He died at 18, his mother with him. Their bodies were dragged, desecrated and discarded. The emperor who dared to become divine was tossed into the Tiber like refuse. Their names were stricken, their shrines dismantled, their god exiled, but not their memory. The echo, a reign that refused to die. Elagabalus did not transform Rome's religion, but he revealed the instability hidden behind its marble facades. He forced Rome to confront questions it had long buried beneath conquest and ceremony. What is an emperor who defines sacredness? Can identity itself be a form of power? He left behind no military triumphs, no infrastructure, no dynasty. But he left behind a story, one that refuses to fade. For centuries, chroniclers cursed him. Artists painted him as a cautionary tale. Philosophers debated him. Today, historians revisit him with new eyes, not to praise, but to understand. Elagabalus was not just a scandal, he was a provocation. Final reflection. The price of daring to be different. In a world that demanded conformity, Elagabalus embodied defiance. He was not the emperor Rome wanted. He was the emperor that made Rome look inward. His reign asks us, what if power wore perfume? What if truth spoke in whispers, not declarations? What if being oneself was the most dangerous act of all? Elagabalus did not survive the empire he ruled, but his vision fragmented, flawed, radiant echoes far beyond the Tiber. His life was not a warning, it was a mirror. And the empire, confronted with its own reflection, shattered it. Even emperors bleed, even gods fall. But sometimes the fall is where the future begins.